3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, it's the GT post-election roundup. Thanks for coming in, George Lambert. He spent about 45 minutes with us. Maybe a little bit longer, but we had him in. If you missed the pre-show, hopefully Skip will get that posted later, and you can see what we talked about before we even started the program. We'd like to move on to our next guest, Greg Moore, State Director for Americans for Prosperity in New Hampshire, served as Chief of Staff to the New Hampshire House and also as a Policy Director for the New Hampshire House. He's done a lot of other campaign communications issues. We've got him here to help talk to us about what happened in New Hampshire, what happened nationally. Greg, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on. It's been a while.
It has.
Here from the palatial Granite Grok studio.
That's right. Well, you know what? We kind of figure, as you get closer and closer to election, you're busier and busier and busier. So, but we did want to bring you in to talk about what happened in New Hampshire. What do we have for a final count on House seats? It's around 235, 8.
Well, right now it's the breakdown is 238 Republicans, 159 Democrats, and 3 ties. I got a hunch that those 3 ties might get recounted.
You think so?
Yeah. So the way the system works is that there has to be a winner and a loser. So they actually have to go and pick a winner and loser. And it's usually a coin toss or some other similarly high-tech solution determining a winner because the loser has to request a recount. So you need to have a winner in order to have a recount. So the Secretary of State is going to bring in all 3 of the sets of candidates, and they're going to do this high-tech coin flipping, and then they're ultimately going to have to go and figure out who the winner and the loser is. It's not a case where you get to trade off. So each session, one person gets a sit, and then in the next session, someone else gets a sit. So, but you're looking at roughly 240 House seats. That's if you what we call an R+0 or a D+0 election, meaning it's pretty much right on the head, and that's pretty much where the top of the ticket was. The Senate race was pretty much right on its head, about 50-50. That's the last time we had that was 2004. So it's weird because we're used to just having swing elections. I mean, not wave elections here in New Hampshire. We're so accustomed to it that we're not accustomed, frankly, to having an election that's pretty much evenly matched. And the last time that happened was 2004. That was the Bush-Kerry, and as you guys remember, also Benson-Lynch. And both of those races are pretty much dead even here in New Hampshire. And you had about 240 House members. So that's what you get when you have a dead even election, is roughly about 240 House members. Fewer senators. It's 14 Republican senators versus 16 in 2004. But that's part of that has to do with the new map. The map was changed in 2000 for the 2012 election through redistricting to basically take away a lot of the variability in the Senate. So there's a lot more, the actual number of seats in play in the state Senate are smaller than they were in the last decade. So you're not going to see, like we saw, 19 Republicans elected in 2010. It's unlikely you're going to see that in New Hampshire with this current Senate map.
You know what I'd rather propose instead of that high-tech coin flip?
What's that?
That would be a la the reality show Survivor. Make fire, break string. That'll show skills.
Well, I got to tell you, there were some interesting matchups out in the ties. Former Representative Ken Sheffert had a tie with current Representative Rennie Cushing. He probably his major claim to fame is his opposition to the death penalty. And right near Concord in Canterbury and Loudoun, there was a fellow by the name of Michael Moffett, and he was running against a fellow by the name of Schomburger, and there's a tie there. And then out in Cheshire County in Swansea, there's another tie. So really, there's it's going to be interesting. I would, like I said, about 240 House members, 14 senators, and three executive councilors. But from I think the big picture, taking it to the higher level, what happened nationally is obviously there was a massive repudiation of the agenda of President Obama. The president obviously has run a very aggressive effort, in many cases working around the legislative process, in many cases doing things that are focused on his base, and doing it in a way, because you're going around the legislative process, you're alienating the conservative base and really sort of getting them fired up and energized. And so what we saw is a net pickup of, at the minimum, 7 Republican seats in the U.S. Senate, probably minimum of 8, because it looks like Alaska is going to be won by the fellow Sullivan. And then, of course, is one runoff election in Louisiana. They have a very different system down there. They also use Napoleonic Code for law as opposed to English common law. So they're a little bit of a different breed out there. But they don't actually have a primary. They actually have that election the same day. And if no one gets 50%, the top 2 advance to a runoff, and that's what's going to happen on December 6th. So we're going to see.
By the way, do you know if Maine's has endorsed Cassidy, the 2 Republicans?
I don't. I'm not sure exactly where that situation stands down in Louisiana. I know that the Democratic Party nationally appears to be less
and running,
less enthusiastic, and they're already starting to reduce their ad buys, and it's looking like they're looking at it as a sort of a very red state, and in a lower turnout, they figure that the Republicans are probably more likely than not. If it had been the battle for the 51st seat, there's no question this would have been the Super Bowl of American politics, and everyone's just coming into Louisiana. I mean, it's kind of ironic because the Super Bowl is often played in Louisiana, but that's what happened nationally. Here in New Hampshire is a very different situation. The Republican wave that smashed across the rocks nationally didn't happen in New Hampshire, and that had to do with the fact that the left, and I tend not to use the words Republicans and Democrats. That's so last century. It's really the left and the right, because you have a lot of these groups that are involved that may or may not be partisan or organized or orientated, but generally speaking, they tend to support conservative candidates or liberal candidates, and it really is the right and the left. And the left put a presidential level ground game here in New Hampshire, and we saw that. I think the best place you can see that is looking at the U.S. House races, and I say that because 3 out of the 4 individuals involved were here in 2010. So it's a good analog there to review the change between 2010 and 2014. In 2010, Congressman-elect Frank Inta got 121,000 votes, a little more than that. This year he got 125,000 votes, and he actually won by a much wider margin in 2010. That's because Carol Shea Porter went from 95,000 votes up to 116,000, a net pickup of over 21,000 votes. And in the 2nd congressional district, Representative Mary Linda Garcia, with the number of votes she got this year, she would have beat Ann Custer in 2010. The difference is that Ann Custer went from 105,000 up to 130,000 votes. So she picked up 25,000 additional votes. Combine the two, that's 47,000 additional votes across the state of New Hampshire. Actually,
how many of those belong here is the question.
Well, I mean, we haven't seen same-day registration, but the Republican candidates actually increased by 3,000 votes the number of people who voted for them, which tells me that the conservative base didn't stay home. The conservative base wasn't unenthusiastic. People weren't any less angry. It's just that there was a fantastic get-out-the-vote operation on the right at 47,000. You put those 47,000 people in there, and if they absent those folks, and we have an environment more like 2010, you're talking about Senator-elect Scott Brown, Governor-elect Walt Havenstein, and 2 Republican representatives, I guess Congressman and Congresswoman. So I know that's Congress critters. Yeah, exactly. But fundamentally, you have to tip your hat to the left. They put an enormous ground game in it, and it wasn't just the New Hampshire Democratic Party, and they indicated they have something on the order of 120 staffers.
Yeah, correct. I need to get this in. I want you to address it because AFP, Americans for Prosperity, got written up multiple times at the national level about the technology they were using, you were using, in your own get-out-the-vote processes as well. And you talk about the vote totals going up, and I think in no small way you folks were able to mobilize the members here in New Hampshire to help that process.
Absolutely.
And I would like you to talk about some of the actual technology at some point.
Absolutely. We're working very very diligently to try to upgrade our ability to have a strong permanent ground game here in New Hampshire. But we have 2 full-time and 8 part-time field staffers. And you look at what the left brought.
You're doing better than the GOP.
Well, but if you look at what the left all in is bringing to the table.
Oh yeah.
Next Gen Climate, 24 full-time staffers plus a whole host of part-time staffers. You're looking at the AFL-CIO, and just the AFL-CIO. That's not even counting the NEA, the professional firefighters, the Teamsters. That's not counting. The League of Conservation Voters. That's not counting Planned Parenthood. That's not counting the
HRC, Granite State Progress, NHAC. All of these people.
All
they
these
have
groups,
full-time and part-time staff.
And the number of folks on the left that they brought was in excess of 250 people on the ground doing that get out to vote. That is a presidential level ground game operation here in New Hampshire. And if people want to know why the results are different from 2010, the answer is very simple. It's because the left put the effort into bringing the people out, and the right did not. If the right had made a similar level of effort, that most likely you would have seen a result similar to 2010.
Yeah, see, we disagree. We think that from a conservative grassroots Tea Party viewpoint, this election couldn't get any better because the bottom up won. The folks that really matter under the rubric of screw DC, save New Hampshire. We won. We've got the House. We have the Senate, at least by numbers. I wouldn't say ideologically, given the results of what they did to us, or what the Republicans did to us as a state in this last session.
We're still going to be really busy with the Senate.
Yeah,
we're going to have to keep the pressure on because there's a number of linguini spined members there.
Hi, Greg. But we also took over the executive council, and when I look at the 3 Republicans there, that's effectively a break on the governor. That's going to bring.
It's going to be a very challenging 2 years for Governor
Yeah,
Hassan.
it's a good thing she's already got her new drapes in the office, because otherwise she's not getting them. But as far as we are concerned, I said for months, Scott Brown is irrelevant to the Republicans taking over the U.S. Senate, and I'm okay with that. And given what Havenstein said to his base and insulted them, I'm okay with that too. And that's the official Grok persuasion. Because if the Republicans stick to their principles, and again, the New Hampshire Senate Republicans are a big if, but we could take care of the conservative stuff here in New Hampshire, and that's all we care about.
Well, I think that when you look at it from a perspective of folks trying to advance free market policies in New Hampshire, it's a disappointment in that, unlike 2010, there isn't the ability to pass a lot of good laws, whether it's by either having a more free market aligned governor or by having free market aligned House and Senate that have veto-proof majorities, as we saw in 2011 and 2012. We don't have that right now. So right now, basically, what you're looking at more or less is a holding pattern for 2 years, and the question is what, if anything, is going to happen. The leverage, though, there is a lot of leverage for the Republican leaders in the House and the Senate. And the reason why I say that is because you have a governor who is, I think most people acknowledge, has an eye towards a U.S. Senate seat in 2016. And so she needs wins. She needs to have a list of items that she can point to as accomplishments. And so fundamentally, she needs to get something done. She needs to put some skins on the wall in order to demonstrate her competence.
No. I'm going to disagree.
But skins on the wall for Democrats, are they rubber skins?
But well, be that as it may, she's in a position where she needs to have wins, and 2 years of just being at loggerheads and getting nothing done is not the way to transition into a U.S. Senate campaign. If you're a governor, it's okay if you're a legislator running for office, but when you're a governor, you're going to be viewed on whether or not you've gotten anything done. And so I think that's going to make it incumbent upon her to try to find common ground with the legislative leaders, and it also shows why it's so critical to have legislative leaders who are committed to strong free market policies and ideas.
But Steve had it right. The electorate turned out here in New Hampshire and said, we're voting for the Bill O'Brien budget. because that's all the Democrats ran against was you don't want another Bill O'Brien.
They were mad when I said that. I loved that.
And the people said, "Oh yes, we do," because he held the line. And right now, Maggie Hassan is proposing a $2 billion biennial increase, and we need somebody that'll hold the line.
Yeah. But the other thing is, all the Democrats are saying, we want to reach across the aisle, we want to be bipartisan, we want to work with the Republicans. That's what we're going to hold her to this entire time. So putting skins up, well, that's not bipartisan. That's not working with the Republicans. That's not reaching across the aisle.
By putting skins up, she's going to have to work closely with House and Senate leadership. There's no alternative but to work with Senate.
If she wants to have any victories, be they moderate skins, whatever, it doesn't matter what they are. She does. She needs to have a few things to point to.
Right.
That says, look, I wasn't the obstructionist.
Right.
I wasn't, and she really doesn't have a choice. You're absolutely right. I mean, and that is something I thought about with the Senate, the U.S. Senate as well. I said to Jean, I called her, what did I say? I had a name for it. Because she's, 99 Obama, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And I wrote it yesterday. Here we go. Jean Shaheen, the aisle crossing machine, take 2. And, I made a joke about it to the hokey pokey. I said, you put your left hand in, you chop their right hand off, you grab their bloody stump, and you drag their ass across. That's what they mean by bipartisan. That's what they mean by reaching across the aisle. We have to do something similar by just saying, no, screw you.
Right.
If you want to join us, we're going this way.
If Governor Hassan vetoes a budget and we're operating on continuing resolutions and some of the issues aren't addressed, if she's not willing to come to the table and work with the legislature on some alternative to the Medicaid expansion, because I think it's unlikely you're going to see this legislature support. And remember, the current Medicaid expansion expires; it goes away. So there's going to be an alternative to sort of look at some free market policies to find ways to lower insurance costs to make health care more affordable for people. And she's either got to come to that, or there's a loggerhead and Medicaid expansion just goes away entirely.
Rubbish. And I'll tell you why. Hold on.
I think we're on the same page. You first.
That's absolute rubbish, because it's not going to happen. Because it was the New Hampshire State Republicans that wrote the legislation, passed the legislation, make sure that they voted for it. And they all used Nancy Stiles as the scapegoat to say, we are just trying to make it less worse. I had several senators on the Republican side tell me that. So they tried to use her as their leverage. Well, you know something? If that was really, really true, then why did the New Hampshire Senate Republican Majority PAC give her gobs of money in the primary to support her against a real conservative candidate? And then why did the New Hampshire GOP give her scads more in the general election? I'm sorry that they've just become the incumbency club here, and they are not going to veto the continuance of Medicaid expansion. Not happening.
It's a very different dynamic, Skip. I would say, like I said, a lot of it comes down to leadership in the House and the Senate, and where they're willing to go. I would say if you look at the New Hampshire State Senate, it has become considerably more conservative. You look at.
Please, who's still the leadership?
You're adding folks like Gary Daniels. You're adding folks like Regina Birdsell, Kevin Avard. The Republican caucus in the New Hampshire Senate just got a lot more conservative, and obviously it depends on who the New Hampshire House selects as a leader. And who they choose to bring as a leader. But I can't see, for example, someone like a Bill O'Brien saying, hey, let's continue this Medicaid expansion. That's a great idea. And you have to actually pass something in order to extend it. That's the key thing. Something has to be passed, because doing nothing means the whole program goes away.
So let me just put a worst case scenario on the line. We get to the end of 2016.
You did tell him to wait for you, so he has to go.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. You get to the end of 2016, and the Republicans say, hell no, and the Democrats are using it as the scare tactic to get Democrats in the State House to pass the reenactment.
I will tell you this. These elections are all nationalized, and particularly presidential election is going to be nationalized. I know it's sort of it goes against the grain of most of the folks who go up in the legislature who think that their constituents are hanging on the drip of every single vote that they cast. I get bad news with with literally tens of millions of dollars of TV ads that are going to be beamed into people's homes about the presidential race, about a competitive U.S. Senate race, probably 2 competitive U.S. House races, and an open seat governor's race. The level of interest in an individual vote in the House Representatives or the Senate is going to be tiny. And moreover, if we know what the top of the ticket is going to look like in terms of the election, I can pretty much tell you exactly what the makeup of the New Hampshire House and the Senate is. I wish that these folks, could actually go and the individuals in their who are their constituents would follow along with everything they do. But the truth of the matter is, particularly with the breakdown of local newspapers, particularly with the breakdown of people getting their sources at the local level, where now people are watching national news, they're watching Fox News, they're watching CNN, they're watching MSNBC, depending on what your particular persuasion is. But you're probably watching something that's what's going on in Washington, and that's how people vote. It's unfortunate because there was a time and place, particularly us, where we grew up reading the newspaper and we followed what was happening up in the State House. But if you're watching Fox News, how much coverage is there of the New Hampshire State House and Fox News? Unfortunately, there's almost none. And most of the people are voting based upon what they're seeing in the news, and the news people are following, whether it's on the internet or whether it's on national cable, does not get involved in local news anymore. People have to come to places like Granite Rock to find out what's going on in local news. But the folks who come to Granite Rock and get their news at Granite Rock, generally speaking, those are people who are not what I'd call those swing voters. They're not the people in the middle who actually decide elections. I hate to say it.
No,
I hate to say it.
And that's true, but here's the deal. For those of us who are watching it all the time, one of the memes I've tried to put out is consistency breeds trust, yields votes. And you know something? I don't trust the Senate Republicans, because you kind of went off on a tangent and started to talk about the New Hampshire House and who the leadership would be. And you're right. I don't trust Gene Chandler at all to hew to the Republican line as far as something like this, because they're too scared of losing their butts in their seats. And that's the bottom line. That's what politicians do. But the state Senate leadership hasn't changed. They're the ones, Morse and Bradley and a couple others, they're still there, regardless of, and I think this is a good thing, that Daniels and Arvid got in. And hopefully
Avard.
Avard. Well, no, sorry.
You're confusing Ovid Lamontagne and Kevin Avard.
Yeah, so...
Imagine that, Ovid Avard.
But it's the majority leadership that still sets the calendar and the climate there. And they're the ones who gave us Medicaid expansion in the first place. Of course they're not going to get rid of it at the end of the 3 years.
Like I said,
that's just the way it is.
Like I said, the Senate can't do anything by itself, first and foremost. They can't. And we all know that. And it's going to take everybody coming together. And if Governor Hassan's not willing to sit down and have these types of conversations, she won't get a budget. I mean, she can keep vetoing budgets and working on continuing resolutions, but that's nothing you want to run into a U.S. Senate campaign saying, "Hey, look, we don't have a budget here in New Hampshire." I think Kelly Ayott's folks would pretty much make that an issue if she was running against somebody who couldn't even get a budget passed. And she's got to find a solution on it, and that's just one of many issues. I mean, there's a whole host of issues where she's going to need to come to the leadership in the House and the Senate and sit down and get something done if she wants to have something that she can campaign on.
And why do they have to give a continuing resolutions? What if they say, hell no, you either sign this budget or you don't get any money?
Well, I mean,
they don't have the stones to do it.
I think that the public can rightly look at their leaders if the government is shut down and say there has been a failure of leadership. And that's not a partisan thing. That's saying it is a failure of leadership if you can't do your job and get a budget passed.
Yeah, but I think there's a growing contingent all over of people who are voluntarily joining the Leave Us the Hell Alone coalition, and that they look at the nonsense that goes on, and with government being more and more intrusive, when the federal government shut down, I was fine with that. We got 50 other governments that can take up the slack.
It's because they didn't really shut down. But anyway.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
I did want to ask you.
Sorry.
If we get the right leadership in the House, you're talking about the Stiles coalition over there in the Senate, but they moved to a solution that they thought was beneficial to them, be it political or otherwise. And then they kicked the can down the road. If you have the right leadership in the House, if they have the ability to block the Senate, right? They do. The Senate then has to come to them to compromise on a solution, which means that House leadership is as important, if ever it was, right now. We need to make sure that we have people running the House, Republican side of the House, that are going to do that are going to say, look, this isn't going to work. We can't afford this. The government's going to renege eventually on this money, and we're going to have to come up with it one way or another. We need to make a decision about how to get these people off this program or what to do about that moving down the road. So if they are able to leverage that against the same Senate that was like, okay, that might work.
And it's important also to realize that House members, New Hampshire House members, by their very nature, are a lot less influenced by things like lobbyists. The average House race runs on what, $500?
Maybe
that. Some of them are less.
Some of them are
they
more.
don't. Some of them don't spend any money.
Some spend no money. Some spend more. Some spend less. But the bottom line is they're not dependent upon a check from a lobbyist to worry about getting themselves reelected, and or a special interest group saying if I alienate that group, I'm not going to have the money to run my campaign, and that's very different from the House. You really can't. The influence of lobbyists in the House is much less than it is in the Senate. And I think that when you look at an issue like this one, you see a lot of special interests who are looking forward to continuing something, just make sure it keeps in place. The House is less interested in how those special interests ally themselves, arrange themselves, what kind of pressure they can put. They're more focused on I'm a big believer that the House are less influenced by that and more focused on what they consider to be good policy, because they're interested in getting elected. Sure, a lot of them, just like anybody who's in office, probably wants a chance to be reelected, but their goal is frequently less driven by who am I going to offend who could potentially write a check for me.
All right, we're almost to the end of the segment. How do people reach you, AFP New Hampshire, et cetera, et cetera?
AFP New Hampshire, we're located in Manchester on Granite Street, and it's Granite, see?
Yep.
See what we did there?
Yeah, well, I noticed when you open the office.
but the way to contact us is best way is via our website, americansforprosperity.org/new-hampshire. That's the best way to reach out to us. You can always go to our website. You can either email us or call us at any time. info@afphq.org also gets to us, and we look forward to talking to anybody who wants to be interested in free markets, entrepreneurship, and economic freedom.
And hopefully we can get you back to talk about the digital side that we never really got to. Thank you so much, Greg, for coming in.
Yeah, we didn't talk tech.
And we're going to see if we can get
time.
Bill O'Brien on the phone in a couple minutes, and we will continue our post-election coverage. This is Grok Talk.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the Right to Know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.